On episode 734 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Alex Viada and discuss his book, The Ultimate Hybrid Athlete, a definitive guide to achieving peak athleticism across all disciplines. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allan, an online health and fitness coach and author of The Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Allan. Hope you're having a great day. This is going to be an awesome conversation with Alex, and I can't wait to get started. Our guest today began his career in clinical research and healthcare consulting and has been a coach, educator, and author in the fitness industry for over 20 years. He has worked with over 1,000 athletes ranging from all-time record-holding powerlifters to ultramarathoners and has helped countless individuals prepare for first responder careers and military selection. He coined the term hybrid athlete to describe athletes who strive to develop elite performance in both strength and endurance, and has spent his career perfecting this style of training. He himself has competed in Ironman triathlons and powerlifting and has deadlifted 700 pounds the same week as running an ultramarathon. With no further ado, here's Alex Viada. Alex, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Hey, thank you very much.
So your book is called The Ultimate Hybrid Athlete, a definitive guide to achieving peak athleticism across all disciplines. And there was so much about this book that I fell in love with. One was your ability to go in really deep in things, but still keep it at a level that can be followed, which was kind of really hard to do.
Yeah.
But the other side of it was that you put together like a very powerful, this is how it all works. These are the things you need to look out for. Oh, and here's the complete programs. I mean, there's nothing left to do but just plug it in and perform. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. That was kind of the intent. I really wanted somebody to be able to pick up the book, say, okay, what's this idea about? And it's not just telling them the overall concept. It's saying, hey, if you really want to get into the weeds of why this works, I'll explain it for you. If you're just interested in the 30,000 foot view and then want the programs, you can just do that. It's like whatever, choose the way you want to approach it.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of it is just the concept of a hybrid athlete, because I think, we all, my age group particularly, CrossFit came out and that, the fittest person, and you're like, okay, yes, that person's really strong. That person seems to have awesome motor and endurance, and, but that's them. It's not me. Or it was me for a while until my ego broke me. And I realized, okay, maybe not the best protocol for me to follow when I know how to do it better myself. But that all said, I like the phrase because I believe each and every one of us is a hybrid athlete. Yes, you may want to be good at a sport. You may want to be excellent at tennis. Or you may want to be very, very strong. So, all the young guys in the gym are looking up to you because you can, bench and squat more than they can. But the reality of it is life is an athletic event if you're living it right. And the skills that you can learn are cross. You don't need to just be strong as a grandfather. You need to have the stamina, you need to have the muscle mass and the bone density, and you need to have the strength. And you got to put it together in a way that's workable. And for most of us thinking, well, I can't train to be three different athletes. Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Yeah, and I really like that you say that, and there's because one of the thoughts very very early on in developing this whole hybrid concept or thinking about it was I remember this was years ago. I was a power lifter mostly, like that was my background, and without needing to get into the details, I really just fell in love with the idea of some of these endurance races, and I remember lining up at the start of a 100-mile bike race, and I looked about twice the width of anybody else on any of the bikes. I looked like I was about to eat my bike. And, there's this thought in the back of my head is like, do I even belong here? I feel like I'm the wrong body type. Like I've always considered myself a lifter. That was my thing. And, I said, of course I belong here. Like I've done the training. I love the sport. And part of what I really want to convey to people is that whatever you're good at, whatever you love, you think of yourself as a lifter, you think of yourself as a runner, whatever else, that doesn't mean you can't be these other things. If that's your identity and you love it, that's great. But you can still excel at whatever else you want to try and whatever else you want to incorporate. Those doors aren't shut to you. It takes a little bit more care to go through them, but they're there for you. And like you said, you need them. There's nothing worse than getting old and being strong but being brittle, or being able to run forever but being brittle. Like that's what I want to avoid.
Yeah, and a lot of folks will do that. They'll have their sweet spot sport. They're I'm a runner, and then as a result, they're not doing the other things to keep
Yep.
themselves fit, and eventually that comes back to bite them, and then they can't even run. And
Yeah.
so this is a way to kind of put it all together in a load that works. And so I want to
Yeah.
start this conversation out with the concept of fatigue.
Mhm.
Um, and you brought up a term I love. I love this term. I'm going to use this term a lot. It's called junk volume.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think working out for the sake of working out. What we really need is the minimum effective dose. So can you talk about fatigue, how we can
Sure.
manage it in a way that still lets us do all the things we want to do, and
Yeah.
how that all fits together.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I really want to give people, and I know this is kind of a very Gen Z term, but I really want to empower people to be able to think about like, why am I doing this exercise? What is the purpose? All of this eliminating this junk volume it's about training with intent. And you say, all right, I'm going out for a run today. What is the intent of this run? Is it just to run a bunch of miles? Or is it to run, is it to expose my body to this stimulus at this level of intensity for this long? And that's kind of what I really want people to think about in their training. Like you go in and you're doing an upper body workout, you're doing a pressing workout and all that. And you think, okay, what's the objective behind my heavy sets? What am I telling my body it needs to do by doing this session? Am I just putting up a bunch of volume and, not really thinking about how close to failure I am and all that, and just doing 30 sets on 6 different exercises and not really knowing what I went in for? Or am I saying, hey, you know what? I'm only going to do a couple of exercises. I'm going to do each one with intent. I'm going to do just enough to tell my body it's got to adapt the way I want it to adapt. It's either going to have to get physically stronger. It's going to have to improve coordination. I'm going to tell the muscles they're not big enough by, enough tension with a little bit of fatigue. That's it. It's training with intent, doing just what you need to do to get that stimulus, because anything else is just increasing fatigue without doing much for your fitness.
Now, this kind of takes me to the next concept I wanted to dive into, and it's a term trainers know a lot because it's what we use. We use progressive overload as a way of
Mhm.
getting people stronger.
Yep.
But you had a concept as you kind of got into talking about how to do progressive overload, and that we might be looking at it wrong.
Yeah, and I think this is really interesting because if you look at where the term comes from, the idea of overload, it doesn't mean necessarily adding more weight. Overload is a principle that overload is required for adaptation. And overload means subjecting the body to some stress that it is not adequately prepared for that triggers an adaptive response. So doing something to your body where all of those mechanisms kick in and override the whole efficiency thing, because the body doesn't like adding muscle. The body doesn't like adding anything it doesn't need. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, the overload principle says if I expose the body to a significant enough stress, it's going to adapt. Progressive just means that as the process of overload continues and you get fitter, the overload stimulus needs to actually stay sufficient to cause adaptation. And I think the reason that makes a difference is people think progressive overload, they think I've got to constantly do more work, constantly add weight. If I'm not adding weight, I'm not progressing. But the way it really works is, and the example I give is, let's just say I do 200 pounds for 10 reps on chest press this week, and that is as much as I can do. Same next week, and say that's enough for adaptation. Next week, say I do 200 for 10 reps as well. Am I thinking that I got so much stronger in that 1 week that 200 for 10 reps is not enough to trigger a stimulus? It still probably is, and it will be for a while. So when I tell people to think of progressive overload, what I think of is just don't take any steps back, and just realize that, hey, as long as you're putting effort in, you could probably keep the same stimulus and progress from it, as long as you're not, retreating, and as long as you're being honest with yourself about, hey, all right, if I can do a little bit more this week, I'm going to do a little bit more. But it's that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, the way I kind of thought of it is like, you're going to take one step at a time, and taking another step. When you think about plates, okay, I actually have quarter-pound plates when I train people in person, because they like to see the weights go up, and just even adding a plate makes them feel like they accomplished more in that workout. Because if you do think you're doing the same workout, it just feels a little easier. You're not progressing, and that's not true. So the way I kind of thought was like, there's like a range. And so as long as you're in that range, and there's like a curve, and so there is going to be a diminishing return over time. And then that's when you're going to bump up the weight.
Exactly.
But again, even with plates, particularly early on when you're not as strong, we're talking about going from 20, in many cases, to 25-pound dumbbells.
Yeah.
That's significant.
That can be a lot. Yeah. Percentage-wise, it's wild.
Right. Yeah. But we don't think about it all the time that way. Is what I call the law of small numbers, is that is a huge step. So maybe sticking with the 20s for a while, and then you're ready for the 25s, probably the better approach, only because you need to adapt to the 20s almost fully. And then when you notice that it's okay, this is kind of silly easy, then it's probably time to step to that next one. So that's kind of the way I thought about it, is just thinking about them in stages or steps, because within a range, you're still going to be progressing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that, because, I talk to people about, exercises like lateral raises and things like that. And, they say, oh, should I go with the dumbbells? I'm going, would you like, let's say you can leg press 400 pounds. Would you say that the next week you got to do 500 pounds because that's the next interval up? Like, that's the percentage increase we're talking about. Like, you keep using that same stimulus, it's going to get easier, maybe add a rep here and there, but progress is slow, I mean, a lot of cases, a couple percentage points a month in a lift or in speed or in anything else is a pretty big deal. Yeah. We're in this for the long haul. And I tell people, like, hey, think about this. Think about that lift going up 10 to 15% over the course of a year. Week to week, it's pretty small. So have some patience with yourself. Don't push too hard and burn out.
That's a key word, patience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Patience and control of ego.
The long game. Long game.
Okay. Now, with hybrid training, because we use another term that coaches use because it works, is we periodize, because we don't want to plateau. So we're going to change things up, typically for most of us, I think every 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the client. We're going to change things up as a way of making sure that they don't just fully adapt to what we're doing. And then now there's marginal gains that they're not happy with. Because again, happy client sticks around. If they don't feel like they're progressing, they don't. So we use periodization, but in hybrid training, periodization sounds weird.
Yeah. So, because the thing with periodization is, in its simplest form, periodization is, you're stacking on different kinds of adaptations and all, but for the most part, the fundamental one we talk about is, okay, we up the intensity, get to a point where you're really feeling that fatigue, and we take a break. And, there are a lot of different types of periodization and block and this and that and the other, but fundamentally, that's the idea. Push a little bit harder, put the pieces together, reach a peak, deload. push a little bit harder. Every 8 weeks to 12 weeks, we start a new cycle, we deload. The difficult thing when you're doing hybrid training is, let's say you're running and you're lifting and you're cycling. Like, let's say those are the three things you love to do. Chances are that each one of those is going to be progressing and peaking at a different rate. Let's say your lifting is on an 8-week cycle, your running is on a 12-week cycle, and your cycling is on a 20-week cycle because you hate it and it's winter and you can't sit on the trainer. What's going to happen then? So after 8 weeks, you're peaking in your lifting, but you're still increasing your running. If 8 weeks, you suddenly decide, all right, I'm going to deload on my lifting, but you're still running harder and harder, you're probably not going to recover that well from that lifting. That deload is going to come at the wrong time because you're still pushing everything else hard. So a lot of that it gets a wrench thrown in it because each one is progressing at a different rate, which is why hybrid periodization is very much about tracking each one of those and just staying under your limit, being able to see like, okay, I'm getting a little close to burnout of lifting. Let me take it easy, drop back a little bit. I consider hybrid progression a little bit like if anyone does bouldering or rock climbing. 4 limbs, 3 are always in contact with the wall, 1 advances at a time. Everything is constantly moving up, but you can let one thing rest. You can find the best way to progress, best way to increase. Eventually, the whole thing moves upwards.
Yeah, I've seen lifters, and they'll brace themselves in with one hand and let the other hand recover, and then switch it up and let that one recover.
Yep.
I like that. I like that. Um,
Yeah.
Now, you brought up something in warm ups. You call it ramp. And I just thought this was actually brilliant because I think most of us, when we think about warming up, we only think about the R,
Yeah.
but there's a lot
Yeah.
more to it than that. Can you talk through the ramp acronym and how that's going to help us warm up better?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I like ramp warm-ups is, like you said, a lot of people just focus on the R. They just focus on the raise, get everything moving and all that. And when you're actually warming up for any activity, it is really important that you not only, get the circulation going, but you prepare the limbs, you prepare the body for the work it's about to do. So what you're doing is you're raising your heart rate, you're activating the target muscles, you're mobilizing the target muscles, and then you're potentiating. And what this means is activate. So raise, we already know, get the heart rate up a little bit, get the blood flowing, circulation going. There are a lot of small metabolic changes that happen at that point, get everything ready to go. And that's, even 5 minutes of jumping jacks or on an air bike or something like that is good, even before a lift. It just gets everything moving, gets some of the right hormones going. So when you activate something, you're saying, all right, today I'm going to be working my legs, or today I'm going to be working my arms, or whatever else. As it stands, when I go into activity, my brain is not really ready to learn yet. And lifting and running and all that, there's very much a learning process. Anything we do to move our body, it's learning how to move. So when we activate, what we're doing is we are essentially saying, all right, let's get those muscles working. Let's get those muscles working in conjunction. Let's get the quadriceps firing. Let me do some exercises that are actually getting these active muscles contracting. Doesn't matter what format you do them in. You're saying, I'm just going to get these things moving, get them activated, and we do go on to the next step. Next step is, now that the muscles are working, let's mobilize. Let's get them working through the appropriate range of motion for the work that I'm about to do. So if we're doing squats, the muscles are already activated, they're warmed up a little bit. Now I'll start going through like some, deep squats, deep unloaded squats. Maybe I'll start doing some, groin stretches. Maybe I'll start doing some glute stretches and so on and so forth. Then the last is potentiate. And potentiate is saying, all right, now that the muscles are warmed up, they're active, they're moving and all that, now let's get them actually ready to do the type of work, which can be, you do some explosive movements, you do coordination focused movements. So at that point, we may start saying, all right, I'm going to do a couple of standing jumps. I'm going to do a couple of squat jumps. I'm going to do a couple of things that potentiate the adaptations I'm about to do. I'm going to get these muscles actually working in the overall effort type that's coming up. If I'm doing sprints, I might do some high knee drills. If I'm doing squats, I'm going to do some, like body weight squats and jump squats, anything like that. So going through that acronym is basically, for me, just a way to mentally say, okay, there are multiple steps to getting your body ready to do work. And if you do that, people say, oh, well, do I warm up? Do I foam roll? Do I do this? What order do I do it all in? And I just say, if you follow that RAMP acronym, because activate, actually, that can include foam rolling as well, by the way. Anything like foam rolling, all that stuff, it actually does stimulate and both stimulate and disinhibit a muscle. So it gets it kind of ready to go. You just follow that basic acronym. You can warm up for anything, and they're 10 to 15 minute warm ups if you do them right.
Yeah. Like I said, I really like that because it brings our awareness to the fact that there's more to this than just getting our heart rate up. So
Yeah,
just getting on the
exactly.
elliptical for for 5 minutes isn't necessarily going to be all you need
Yeah,
for your workout to make sure that you're doing what's necessary for a good solid warm up. And we are
yeah,
warming up, right, everybody?
yeah. Yes. You can't get away with just saying, "All right, I'm just gonna slap my quads a little bit and walk around and put on some music and see how that
I
works."
Yeah, I don't even want to tell you what my instructor in college that I took an exercise class, and his thoughts on warm ups was quite bizarre. But that said, he didn't break. He was old man and he didn't break. That's all I can say. But so,
Hey,
Alex, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are three strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
I think the most important, and I guess I'll talk about the physical side first. The most important on the physical side is don't forget to play. And this is something that I think comes up a lot. When you're young, you do things like you run for no reason, you jump for no reason, you climb on things, you pick up a ball and do ridiculous things with it. Like a lot of that type of stuff, we stop doing as we get older. We get more constrained in how we move. Everything becomes way too deliberate. We don't challenge our bodies in new ways. I always tell people one of the most important things for wellness is not just doing physical things that are, kind of fun or challenging, but also that really sort of test you in a new way. I'll tell people like, hey, you know what? Just try a new sport even once, or try some new activity even once. It doesn't have to be something you're going to do for the rest of your life, but try learning how to properly like throw a good spiral again, or go down to batting cages, or try take up rock climbing or something like that. A lot of things like playing, just using your body in ways that aren't always so structured. Not only is it really healthy for you, it keeps your brain sharp. Learning new physical skills keeps your brain so sharp, and it really shows any kind of like imbalances or gaping holes in your fitness you might not have known of. So I always tell people play more often.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the
So
first one.
that's the first one. That's a big one. The second thing is, everybody talks about the importance of diet and importance of nutrition and everything else. And the main thing that I always say on that is there are so many different types of diets out there that work. And, people try a million ones. And I say use the 70-30 rule. And that is 70% of your meals know exactly what's going in your stomach. Having planned out ahead of time, whatever else, you can be really rigid with your diet 70% of the time if you want. Keep that 30% open to whatever you want. And the reason that's important is a lot of people, even if they really want to get in good shape, they may get too strict with their diet, and they may be missing things in it that they don't know of. I've got a lot of people I know who do the same thing every single day because they're like, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to get in shape. They actually end up with some nutritional deficiencies and all these other things that are wrong, and they're just going, I had no idea. So, and other end of the spectrum, people play around all the time and say, I can't stick to a diet. I don't want to weigh and measure every meal. I'm saying you don't have to. 70% of them, it's going to be as simple as know what you have for breakfast every day, know what you're going to have for dinner every day, but lunch, if you're at work, do whatever you want. Or vice versa. You always want to have dinner with your family, you like going out on weekends, just make sure the rest of that 70% is dialed. It's, perfect is the enemy of good and all that.
Okay.
And honestly, last thing is keep your brain sharp. I know I've talked about that with a lot of the training side of things, but cognitive decline, I think, is because cognitive decline and physical decline are often very closely associated, and a lot of things we stop using our brain for new challenges. Like one of my favorite things to do is just fire up a chess app. You just go to chess and you can just do openers. You can just do opening moves 2-3 times, just practice a couple different things. You don't have to even learn how to play chess. You can just have fun looking at how the pieces move and all that. Anything that gets your brain working, thinking ahead, planning ahead with no consequence is tremendously good your brain. It's good for focus. We start to lose executive function over time because we get very good at getting distracted, or we get very, very bad at multitasking because we know, okay, when I work, I need to stay focused. I'm going to eliminate distractions. That's great. But it also means that we sometimes lose the ability to willfully tune out distractions. And we actually get a little more fragile in how our brain works. We have to have perfect conditions or we just feel scattered. So I tell people, like, do a lot of those kind of things. Do Sudoku, do crosswords, do word searches, do chess.com openings. Keep your brain fresh, keep it challenged. And between those three things, like that's the spectrum.
Cool. Well, like I said, this book, The Ultimate Hybrid Athlete, it's going to give you everything. It's going to put the programs out there for you. But if you want to know why it works, you just read the first part, and then by the time you get to the second and third part, you're learning the exercises, and then you're putting them together in a program that's just made to order. Like I said, this is exactly what most of us need to age well and to be the
Yeah.
hybrid athlete that each and every one of us should be.
Yeah, and what I tried to do in the book is really also make sure that all the components of physical health are in there. And you can follow any one of these programs. You can say, "Hey, I want to try a sprinting program. I want to try a strongman program just for fun." And it's going to give you ways you can do this, and you can really expand your physical capacities and repertoire without necessarily needing brand new pieces of equipment or anything else.
So, Alex, if someone wanted to learn more about you, learn more about the book, The Ultimate Hybrid Athlete, where would you like for
Mhm.
me to send them?
Oh, they can just go to my Instagram. It's alex.viada, or the website is completehumanperformance.com. The book is available on Amazon as well, so I think it's like Barnes and Noble and a bunch of other places, so it's really easy to get access to. But any one of those things, I mean, our website's got all kinds of resources on learning more about hybrid training, and it's got some background on the book, if you're up in the air whether or not you want it. Book is available on Kindle too, so it's pretty easy to get a hold of.
Thank you. And Alex, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Hey man, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Tomas Vinta and discuss his book, Living Fortified: Building Mental and Physical Resilience for Men Over 40, Stories of Practical Wisdom.